Okay. So, hey, welcome back. Another episode today, book 32. This book is the beginning of this reflection and writing for Chris. Am I
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, it was what I stole. I stole this idea, the title of it for the Year of Magical Learning from this book. It's called The Year of Magical Thinking. The book is written by the author Joan Didion, and it's about the year after her life, after her husband, who was also an author, passed away unexpectedly. She watched him die at their kitchen table of a heart attack right in front of her as they were having breakfast one morning. And then the rest of that year, her daughter went into a coma. I forget exactly how she went into a coma, but for the long story short, she was in the ICU with her daughter in a coma on and off throughout the rest of the next year. Her husband passed away. Her daughter's name is Quintana Roo, like the city in Mexico. And her daughter ultimately died. I don't think it was during this book, but it was a couple years later. The book is Joan Didion is a really famous author. She wrote a lot of books over the course of her life, and this is later on in her life, and this was a more of a personal story for her. It's called The Year of Magical Thinking. That year of just a bunch of tragedy, pain, going through a lot. Like, it went through what her husband was going through when he was after he died, and what she went through, and then it went through her daughter being in the ICU and being in a coma, going back and forth in the hospital. Dove into a lot of her personal feelings and thoughts and emotions that were coming up and how she was processing this during that time of her life. And if it sounds familiar or true, I mean, it sounds like kind of like my book, right? So it was actually, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So this book, ironically, I was absolutely terrified. I was terrified to read this book. I don't think I've been more terrified to read another book than this book, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
it's pretty difficult to add on to, whatever it's already at the apex of the pain threshold that you are enduring. So a lot of time it's unimaginable if you can even do that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was tough. I want to say 3 to 4 months after Amelia had passed away. And I was not ready to dive into other people's pain and trauma at that time, or to look at this thing more reflectively. It still just hurt. And I was processing that, and I was writing through that stuff, and I was journaling, and I was reading new books and everything to try to fill my mind with new knowledge, to build new memories and all that other good stuff, while still learning how to keep Amelia with me. And the idea of reading about somebody else's pain and trauma, like, I avoided it like the plague. Like, every book that I chose at that time in my life, I avoided it. I just didn't want to do it. Ironically, my sister, and we talked about this already with option B, I think it was in a couple books back, she started talking to me. I was talking to her about my atomic bomb theory and everything, and I was started to scratch out the first couple pages of the manuscript that became I Can't Imagine. And she got me to read option B, or she sent it to me, and I read the first 40 or 50 pages of it. Kind of broke the seal a little bit of the pain books, but that was kind of like the kiddie pool. After I finished option B, I literally went to Google and I Googled books about pain and trauma, right? And this book just kept coming up of, like, Joan Didion, like, really opened herself up to the world and really talked about her pain and suffering after losing her husband and her daughter. And I was like, do I really want to do this? So I just ripped the Band-Aid off one weekend, and I did this in a weekend. I don't know what I was expecting, honestly. I appreciate her sharing it, and I don't know what I was hoping to get out of it. By the end of it, I think the biggest lesson that I learned was I appreciate her sharing her details of her life and being open and forthcoming with the world about her pain and suffering and her trauma and how she was processing it. I feel like it gave me license a little bit to feel a little bit more at ease to share my own story with the world and to not hold anything back, and that's why the title of this reflection is Don't Be Afraid to Share Your Pain. I don't know if I was, like, inspired by this necessarily or what, but I know that I did feel freedom to that it's not weird to write about this, that it is okay, that other people will hear this, embrace it, understand how you loved your family and what you went through and how this is difficult, and for her it was losing a child and a husband at the same time. For me, it was losing my daughter and going through a traumatic experience in the NICU. And yeah, I guess it just allowed me to think, someday it gave me license to share my own story. And someday I hope that if somebody reads I Can't Imagine, that they feel courageous enough to share their own story. And, and I guess my final sentiment was, when we suffer in silence, we lose. Our lost ones lose, our living family members that want to support us lose, and the world loses. So, just be brave and share your story like Joan, and I guess kind of in a weird way myself. That was just the overall reflection of this book in general. Share your pain with the world. And then I wrote at the bottom of this PS, yes, this is where I got the idea for a year of magical learning. Not a year of magical pain and trauma, but I wanted it to be a year of magical imagination and a year of magical, filling your head with new thoughts and new memories and new ideas. And it was this similar kind of thought process, but just flipping it around. And then, instead of pondering, let's go imagine, let's go learn.
I mean, in my mind, it's not about ripping, it's about taking it as an inspiration, as a motivation. So, I think this is a creative outlet versus just copying somebody's stuff.
Right.
And I think this is going in the right direction.
Perfect. Amazing. Right. So that was the reflection. What's your, the question for everybody else is, what story have you been holding back from sharing with the world that needs to be heard? So something for you to ponder. If you want to share, go for it. If not, that's up to you. But yeah, love to get your thoughts.
So my thought is, don't be afraid to share your pain based on your reflection title. I think that's true. And it's very fitting just because I think if you hold on to your pain, you will feel all the pain.
Yeah.
You have to share it to let go. Because when you share it psychologically, it lightens your burden somehow. Have too much pain, you need to let other people bear with you. And when you do that, allows you to lighten some of that so you can carry on. Because a lot of times, if you don't do that, eventually that pain that you hold continue to grow. It's going to drown you in it. And, it's going to take you away from being the person that you were. You could be a nice and kind person, but the pain could make you into a terrible monster. And so having the outlet to let it out, I think, like I said, I don't know how it works, but I just know that it works.
I think I heard a quote recently, actually, and I can't remember exactly where I heard it, but it was a quote from Jesus that it was, if you bring forth what's inside of you and share it with the world, it'll save you. But if you don't bring forth what's inside of you, it'll
destroy you.
Yeah, right? Exactly. It's very on par with what you're talking about. It's like when I don't know what it is about sharing with other people, sharing the burden of it makes yourself feel better. And in a weird way, it makes other people feel better knowing that it's okay to share their pain, but it helps.
I think it's all in the psychological that we are being conditioned to, to exhibit. I guess that's how our genes are wired, right? Because emotionally, we need to have somebody there to kind of say, okay, I'm here as well. That means that I'm actually not the only one responsible. Therefore, my body is not, my mind and my cell is not trying to carry all of that. And it's whatever we thought, thought becomes thing, that kind of thing that we talked previously in previous episodes. It's that thoughts become things. And this is one of those things, right? And if you continue to hold it, then you feel burdened. You are causing that yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Our minds have a different way of reacting to that event. And that helps, it helps your cells from being, I guess, frozen in that state and allow it to do other things. And then when it starts to flow, then things become better. It progresses.
You know what, just top of mind kind of comes to mind when we're talking about this, like as I'm kind of just pondering it while you're sharing your thoughts, is it's almost like putting it into a box and putting it on a shelf. Like when you share you get it out of you and you get it somewhere else where you can retrieve it and that you can go feel that feeling again, but it's stored in like a memory box on a shelf somewhere where you can go. I can always go for the rest of my life. And, hell, sometimes I reread my own book when I was doing the audio version of it or whatever. It feels like somebody else's life. It doesn't I don't remember everything, to be honest with you anymore. I think if you just kind of hold those things in, eventually it probably stays skewed in your mind a little bit as time goes on. Your writing's a way of processing it. The whole entire book that I wrote was about how I was processing life with my daughter and without my daughter and who I wanted to be going forward. So it was kind of more like almost therapy, really, of me working through my thoughts.
Right. But at the same time, it has to be a thought of having that being kind of like out of your system. It has to have an outlet. So you can think about it, but you think about, say, well, if I'm but if I in this terrible state and there's no outlet, there's no hope, and then you become hopeless. But
Yeah.
if you have hope, then you have the energy to endure, to continue on, to make progress, to get better, right? Because if, for example, you are in some kind of debt, like you're in $1 billion in debt, and there's no way for you to get out, you basically become hopeless. But I come to you and say, hey, Chris, can you help me out? And I say, well, I don't know if this works, but I have an idea. That's all I tell you. I give you hope, right? That allows you to say, well, let me endure a little bit longer before I, take my life or whatever.
Right.
If I tell you that, hey, I have something, it's just an idea, but it gives you a sliver of
like a lifesaver,
yes, and
like
you hold
thrown
on
into the
to
water.
it. You hold on to it, right? So it's an outlet. It gives you that hope. If you can think about it, so not only you have to think about it, but have a way for it to get out of your system. If you don't have it, then it's hard to come to terms with yourself.
The book that I'm reading this week is Daniel Pink's new one. He just came out with The Power of Regret. And it's like just tightly aligning with a lot of like using your feelings and your pain and your emotions to turn it into thoughts, and then turning those thoughts into action, is how you overcome this stuff. And then also how it inspires other people as well when they need a lifeline. A friend of mine, Carson, came up to me after he finished my book, and he's a father of 2. And he said, I'm just blown away. It was a great paradigm kind of shifting event for myself to put my life in perspective and to cherish being a father and to spend more time with my girls. I didn't write the book for Carson, obviously. I wrote it for myself, but if my words can help him in whatever way, shape, or form, or maybe someday if he has his own event, he remembers back to some of the things that I wrote, or maybe he comes across somebody else in his own life and he's like, hey, you should check out this story, it might help you. I think that's why it's important to that thin thread that separates us from hundreds of thousands of lives.
Yes. In the end, you have to share your pain. You have to have some kind of confidant, whether that's, if you don't want to share with the public, share with somebody who is in your circles that you're comfortable sharing. And I think that, to me, is the greatest therapy we can provide for one another, because that allows you, a basic human needs to say, well, is there something I can lean on? Is there someone I can lean on to continue? And then I want to segue a little bit and say, a lot of times an entrepreneur would want to start a company. I would say 99.99% of all solo entrepreneurs would not make it, right? Because there's going to be ups and downs. And so that's why you don't want to do it alone. And so that, to me, it's a great way for you to understand why having a partner in the building of your business is important. Not a someone to work with, but a partner. Because you need that psychological support. Because you can say, well, I'm a business person, I have all these ideas, I can go to Elance or Fiverr or Upwork and get people to do it. You have other people doing work for you, but that person is not your partner. You can't share the psychological support, right? Having a partner is very important for that.
Agreed. I was joking, obviously, with Jazzy Jeff, but yeah.
We shall talk about Jazzy Jeff in the later talks. We don't want to spoil the ending.
It's so crazy how all of this stuff blends together now. It's like this big mashup of all these different concepts, titles, and reflections that have all like start to mash up and to create like a new world, that only you and I probably understand half the time, but at the same time, like it doesn't matter. Like you and I understand what this is and what the context is, where it came from, how, why, and what it means.
Right.
And that's something special. So that's cool. I love it. All right. Well, good chat for the day. And looking forward to picking up tomorrow with book 33.
So until next time, have a good one.